The crowd in front of Buckingham Palace held its breath. Keanu Reeves, the world star, the favorite of millions, stood face to face with the royal guard. He was smiling, but there was something else in his eyes. Provocation? Excitement? A desire to test the limits? Are you human or robot? Keanu grinned, moving closer. The guardsman didn't flinch. The crowd perked up. Phone cameras flashed one after another. It's not another tourist prank. It's Keanu Reeves himself, star of The Matrix and John Wick, trying to break the royal discipline. How about this? Keanu raised his hand as if about to touch the famous bear hat. Step up. Stop. The guardsman moved with lightning-fast precision. The sharp sound of his boots, the short but powerful thrust forced Keanu to take a step back. The crowd gasped. Reeves raised his hands, but something new lit up in his eyes. He wasn't going to back down. And that's when he did something that got the whole world talking about that day. London lived its usual life. Red double-decker buses moved slowly through the streets. Tourists crowded around the sights, taking pictures of every corner of the British capital. But nothing attracted as much attention as Buckingham Palace. Here, in front of the massive iron gates, stood the royal guards, the embodiment of discipline, honor, and tradition. It was here, through the crowd of tourists, confidently walked the man whom the whole world knew. Keanu Reeves. Is that really him? Whispered the woman, grabbing her husband's hand. Oh, my God. Yes. It's Keanu Reeves. Really? Someone was already hurriedly turning on the camera. The crowd became animated. People were whispering, filming. Some even tried to call out to him. But Keanu paid no attention. His gaze was fixed on the figure of the guard, tall, motionless, as if carved from stone. He stopped right in front of him, face to face. The guardsman, impeccably pressed uniform, boots polished to a shine, a bear hat hiding part of his face. Complete calm. Keanu smiled. Dude, you're like a statue. Blink an eye if you recognize me. The guardsman remained immovable. No reaction? Reeves tilted his head. Are you even human or a robot? The crowd chuckled. Someone in the distance shouted out, Keanu, don't push it. But the actor seemed immersed in his game. He slowly walked around the guard, studying him from head to toe. Hell, he's not even breathing, Keanu observed, squinting his eyes. The guard remained unruffled. Reeves bit his lip, as if considering something. Okay. He took another step forward, deliberately violating his personal space. What if I did this? He raised his hand and slowly reached for the guardsman's furry hat. It all happened in a flash. Stop. A sharp, commanding voice cut through the air. Before Keanu realized what had happened, the guardsman took a step forward, pushing him backward with force. The movement was calibrated, hard, but without aggression, just enough to make the intruder retreat. Keanu felt a firm push in his chest and instinctively stepped back. The crowd gasped. Somewhere in the back rows there was a whisper, awesome. He pushed him away. The phones were raised even higher. This was no longer just a funny moment. It was a conflict. Keanu raised his hands as if in surrender. Whoa, take it easy, buddy, he grinned. I'm just kidding. The guardsman froze again in a perfectly straight stance. Keanu looked at him carefully. Okay, he nodded, as if admitting defeat. You're good. But then he turned to the crowd, saw the dozens of cameras eagerly catching his every gesture. And in that moment, his gaze changed. He turned to the guardsman again. Okay, guys, Keanu turned to the audience. Let's see if he has any emotion at all. The crowd roared. The cameras went back up. People realized something interesting was about to happen. Keanu took another step forward, and no one expected what he would do next. The crowd froze. Keanu Reeves, the world-famous star, had just been pushed back by a royal guard in front of Buckingham Palace. But instead of stopping, he took a step forward. Some in the crowd chuckled, some awed, and some whispered, does he seriously want to continue? Keanu tilted his head slightly, studying the guardsman's face. His gaze glowed with excitement. Okay, buddy, you've impressed. But you know, Keanu straightened up and smirked. I've had a lot of experience with the military. The guardsman was silent. Reeves walked around him again, putting his hands behind his back like a general inspecting a soldier. You know I've trained with real fighters, right? Sitting in ambush, learning to shoot, working with professional instructors. No response. Okay, Keanu grinned, raising his hands. Let me ask it another way. He paused, and then slowly leaned forward and whispered conspiratorially, How does it feel to stand here all day with hundreds of people trying to piss you off? The guardsman didn't move. Keanu nodded. Yeah, I get it. You're the kind of guy who keeps up the mark. With a sharp movement, he stretched his arm forward, stopping a millimeter from the guardsman's face, as if about to make a snap in front of his nose. The crowd gasped. The guardsman didn't budge an inch. Reeves shook his head. Man, you're ironclad. But then his gaze lit up. He decided to take it even further. Tensions rise. Keanu turned to the crowd, raised his hands, and said with a smile, Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's test where his limit is. The crowd roared. Keanu, what are you doing? Shouted someone. But he wasn't listening anymore. This was now more than just a fun moment. It had become a test of discipline. Keanu took a sharp step forward, getting as close to the guardsman's face as possible. How about this? He asked, looking into the guardsman's eyes just a few centimeters away. The guardsman was motionless. Unbelievable. Keanu exhaled. You don't even blink. At that moment, something changed. The guardian didn't flinch, but Keanu felt the tension in the air. He understood. There was a line to cross, and one could face consequences. But he was Keanu Reeves. He wanted to test how far he could go, and he crossed the line. He raised his hand sharply and, without touching, made it look like he was going to grab the guardsman's shoulder. Lightning-fast reaction. The guardsman, instantly animated, threw his arm forward with force, pushing Keanu back a step. The crowd exploded with screams. Wow. What? He had moved Keanu Reeves himself. Keanu stepped back, froze, and then slowly raised his eyebrows. The guardsman had already returned to his stance, but now his posture seemed even more tense. Keanu looked at him for a few seconds, and then applauded. Well, buddy, he said, nodding. That's some stamina. The crowd laughed. Some even applauded along with him. But it was obvious. The moment wasn't over yet. Keanu ran his hand along his chin, as if thinking, and took another step forward. It was at that moment that a figure in a dark uniform appeared. An officer of the Royal Guard. The crowd sighed. Keanu turned around and saw a man in a black tunic walking towards him, with a determined expression on his face. Oh, I think they've come for me, Keanu grinned. But he didn't know what awaited him next. The crowd fell silent. An officer of the Royal Guard, a tall figure in a black tunic, with a hard, impenetrable face, was approaching Keanu Reeves with a quick, confident step. The guardsman he had just encountered stood motionless, but the tension in his posture showed that the moment was serious. Oh, I think they've come for me, Keanu muttered, turning around. He put his hands in his pockets and rocked back on his heels, trying to look relaxed. But inside he knew, had just crossed the line. The officer stopped a meter away from him. Sir, step away from the guard post. His voice was low, firm, without a hint of aggression, pure power and authority. The crowd froze. Keanu raised his eyebrows and tilted his head. Just a conversation, officer. Sir, step away from your post immediately. There was a warning in the officer's voice. Keanu thought for a moment. Option 1. Back off, smile, walk away. Option 2. Check out what would happen next. And for some reason, the second option seemed more tempting. He took a step forward. The crowd gasped. Keanu, don't. Someone shouted. Reeves stopped right in front of the officer, meeting his gaze. Look, I respect discipline, he said calmly. But I'm just curious. What happens if I don't step back? There was silence. The crowd froze. The guardsman didn't move. The officer didn't move either, but something flashed in his eyes, the very line Keanu wanted to find. You will be removed from the area. Keanu grinned. Interesting. He slowly removed his hands from his pockets and turned to the guard again. Okay, let's try it this way. He took one last step, and a strong hand touched his shoulder. The officer grabbed him. Not hard, but with such force that Keanu knew it was serious. The crowd screamed. Keanu froze. The officer, without raising his voice, but with iron confidence, said, You are leaving the palace grounds. Right now. Reeves looked down at the officer's hand, then looked up again. The crowd held its breath. And then something happened that no one expected. Keanu smiled. He slowly raised his hands. Okay, he said. I give up. The officer studied him for a second, then removed his hand. Thank you for your cooperation, sir. The crowd breathed a sigh of relief. Keanu took a couple steps back, raising his hands and looking at the gathered people. All right, friends. I think the show is over. The crowd burst into laughter. Keanu, you're awesome. I thought you were going to get arrested. He grinned and looked at the guard, and suddenly did something that became a viral moment in no time. He stood at attention and he saluted the guardsman. The guard didn't move, but Keanu noticed a barely perceptible movement of the fingers on his right hand. It was an almost imperceptible gesture, but to those who understood, it meant everything. Keanu nodded. You're cool, buddy. Turned around and walked away. But the story wasn't over. Keanu Reeves was gone. The crowd outside Buckingham Palace was slowly beginning to disperse, but the phones were still up. People were discussing what had happened, rewatching videos, sharing emotions. Did you see the officer stop him? Holy shit, that's Keanu. He literally tested these guys' limits. Did you notice? The guardsman moved his finger when Keanu saluted. I got it. This needs to go online. That same night, the internet exploded. Viral video. Footage of Keanu standing in front of the guardsman, taunting him, being commanded to stop, then confronting the officer all went viral on social media. The headlines were rife with, newspaper, Keanu Reeves tried to break the royal guard. Look what happened. Newspaper, iron stamina or star defiance. Keanu put on a show outside Buckingham Palace. Newspaper, what the guardsman did at the end. Only the most attentive will notice. Thousands of comments appeared on Reddit, YouTube, and TikTok. Speech balloon, respect to guardsman. This guy is a true professional. Speech balloon, Keanu is a true master of provocation. But does it with style? Speech balloon, and the officer is so tough. Put him in his place right away. Speech balloon, and that micro movement of the hand at the end. Is that a secret confession? Aftermaths. Within 24 hours, the video garnered millions of views. British media came out with headlines like, Did Keanu break protocol? Guards remain adamant. Journalists tried to contact Buckingham Palace for comment. The response was restrained. The Royal Guard follows strict protocols and maintains discipline under all circumstances. But what was most surprising? Keanu's own reaction. Keanu's last word 2 days later. He gave an interview where he was asked about that day at the palace. Keanu laughed. I just wanted to check how cool they were. And yeah, they really don't give up. But the officer stopped you? Keanu, that was my limit. And I took it. And what about that barely perceptible finger movement from the guardsman? Keanu smiled. I guess some walls may not talk, but sometimes they do wink. The end. Rocket.